everyone. Welcome to the talk on stage. I'm a developer at Torchbox. I work on something called Wagtail CMS, which is an open source Django-based CMS. And previously, I also contributed to Django and Wagtail through the Google Summer of Code program as both a contributor and mentor. And most recently, I joined the Django Space program, where we help onboard new contributors to the Django project, and also external packages as well. So, we often hear people say that Django is stable, and in fact, Django itself makes a commitment to stability, as stated in the documentation. Our aim is to provide a modern, dependable web framework of the highest quality that encourages best practices in all projects that use it. So, how do we keep it stable? Well, first one, the most obvious, is through tests. We have lots of tests. We have almost 18,000 tests as of the upcoming 5.2 release. And the tests are run against all the database backends supported by Django. So that's Postgres, SQLite, MySQL, MariaDB, and Oracle. And also all the Python versions supported for each Django version, also across different operating systems as well. And also to minimize disruption, so Django's release cadence is 0.0, 0.1, and then 0.2 LPS, and then back to 0. So for example, if a feature or a setting is deprecated in Django 5.1, it will be removed in Django 6.0. Okay, so this is the release process for Django. I don't know if you can see it all the way back there, but yeah, so for a given version, development happens on the main branch, and that's over a period of about 8 months. And then we fork the main branch to a branch called stable/a.b.x, depending on the version, which marks the feature freeze or the alpha release for a.b. So for example, for Django 5.2, when the alpha is released, we have the stable/5.2.x. And then during the alpha period, new features will not be merged to, new features will only be merged to the main branch, and it will not be backported to the stable ABX branch. So the development of the upcoming 5. Or well, currently it's 5.2.0, or just 5.2, is currently in beta? Alpha. But the development for the upcoming Django 6.0 is happening in parallel. So new features will be added to 6.0. And then after about a month in the alpha release, we have the beta release, which will contain any bug fixes, including non-critical bug fixes. So if there's a bug in Django that's been around for years, it can still go in during the alpha to beta period. After the beta period, only critical bug fixes can be backported, and then after about a month, the RC release is out, which marks the translation string freeze. So if there is any code that changes the translatable strings, it will not be backported to the 5.2 branch. And then after a couple of weeks during the RC release, the final release is out. So yeah, this is an example for 5.0 and 5.1. The 5.0 release was out in December, but the alpha release was out in September. And in 8 months since 5.0 alpha, we have 5.1 alpha in May. So yeah, and it goes on for or after release, basically. So, when is the best time to catch bugs? Does anyone have any idea, any suggestion?
As early as possible.
Right, that's right. So, ideally, it's right before the PR is first due main. So, when it's still in a PR, if possible, we should catch it and make sure it didn't get to main in the first place. But it's hard to keep up with all the PRs that come into Django, and you don't know which ones actually affect your project. So, unless you're a Django fellow, in which case it's literally your job. So, yeah, what you can do instead is you run your tests against Django's main branch. This is an example for GitHub Actions. Yeah, so it's pretty simple. You just need to replace the installed Django version on the CI with the main branch of the Git repo for Django, because Git also allows you to install from Git directly using the syntax Git plus HTTPS, and just put a link to Django's repo and then use an at sign to know which branch you want to install. And then just run your tests as usual. And if you maintain a Django package, you might already do this, maybe with different Django versions. So I just want to remind you to make sure to also test against the main version, not just the released versions. So how does that help? Well, sometimes things do break. So whether intentionally or not, for example, in Whitetail, we test against Django's main branch, as well as the stable branches as well. And just a few hours ago, actually, I just did this screenshot. And yeah, when our tests broke when we ran it against Django's latest main branch, there's an import error saying that the subquery constraint class is missing from Django DB models SQL where. And yeah, sure enough, if you look at Django's repo earlier today, the subquery constraint class has been removed. And this is an internal class, so it's undocumented. That's why it, in this case, Django didn't go through the deprecation process over 2 releases. And in this case, the class was removed because it was more of a workaround to how a feature should have been implemented. Since the workaround is no longer needed, they removed it. So, how does that help you? Well, the good thing about running our tests against Django's main branch is that it makes it easy to find which commit in Django that broke your code. And in this case, well, Whitetail doesn't really use the code, it's just we use it to detect whether the user has used the subquery. And that's not something we support because this is a search backend that's connected to Elasticsearch. That's why for complex queries we do not support it. And in this case, we use that class to check the resulting SQL query. So I guess it's also a lesson on why you shouldn't use Django's internal APIs. But sometimes you do have good reasons to do so. But so if you do, just make sure you run your tests against Django's main branch. And so how does this help Django itself? Well, in some cases, your tests might fail because it's a legitimate bug in Django itself. It's a regression. And Django's tests apparently don't have your use case. So if you're not familiar, this is Django's issue tracker called Track that you can visit on code.djangoproject.com. So yeah, this is an example of issues reported by myself and my colleague Matthew, which I think most, if not all of them, we caught because we ran the test for Whitetail against Django. For example, last month, just 2 days before Django 5.2 alpha release, we caught a bug in Django. The bug was that if you use multi-table inheritance and then you call the full clean method on a child instance, it executes a database query when it shouldn't. And this was a regression caused by the implementation of the composite primary keys introduced in Django 5.2. So I submitted a ticket to Django along with a test case that demonstrates the issue. So yeah, and then the issue was promptly fixed the same day, or maybe it was the following day, I forgot. But it wasn't me who fixed it, I just reported it. But I still get the credit in the commit message. So yeah, wouldn't it be nice to have your name in a commit message in the Django repo?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, run your tests against Django's main and report any issues you find, because otherwise Django will not know about it. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
So I take right the first question. You didn't show whether you have a whitetail if the tester gets Django in. The whitetail CI1 fails, whether it's only allowed to fail and you're just checking it once in a while.
Right, so we do allow it to fail, but I think GitHub has this continue on error option that you can add. For example, if you just want it to be specific to the main branch test, you can set, for example, this is just any flag, I just set experimental, and then continue on error if the matrix is experimental. But I think GitHub still has this annoying issue where if one of your CI job fails, the overall result is reported as a failure.
Okay, so it reports it as an error and doesn't allow merging of the pull request.
Oh no, you don't. We still allow it to
Okay.
merge. Yeah, it's in the end, it's still a manual process.
So is it your job to chase any of these red processes?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay, any more questions?
Thank you, Sage. Would you recommend this for all packages and all Django sites or apps, or like only some cases? Is there a limit?
I don't see a reason why you shouldn't do this. I mean, it's pretty easy if you already have your test and you already test against, well, you have to install Django if it's a Django project, right? Or a Django package. And if it's a Django package, then you really should test at least against the released Django versions. But even better, if you already have the setup for that, it should be fairly simple to just add another job for testing against main.
Follow-up question, because I still have it. Do you think Django maintainers recommend this as well?
I think so, yeah. Cool.